Politics is weird, right? Well, nobody predicted the presidential race would be decided between a werewolf and a vampire. The vampire won handily. That damn hypnotic gaze is cheating, I says. And now we live in a hellish dystopia of blood-sucking bureaucrats. Come to think of it, I guess we did before, but now it's literal. I mean, think about it. If Senator Howler had been elected, he would have been a regular president pretty much all of the time. We'd only have to worry about him being out at night during a full moon. And I guess the Secret Service would have to worry about assassins carrying silver bullets. But they already worry about regular bullets, so what's the big deal? But no, America had to be enthralled by then. Candidate Amelia Leafadrain's smoky words and striking beauty. She said she was older than the country itself, and she personally knew George Washington, that she lived through the Civil War and the Great Depression, that she knew what pitfalls to avoid to preserve the glory of the nation for generations to come. The real kicker was when she started filming those hokey commercials with her zombie husband and those dead-eyed kids, but they used CG and lighting tricks to make them look kind of normal. At the end of every commercial, she would look directly into the camera and turn on that hypnotic gaze, telling the audience to search their hearts to know they really wanted to vote Amelia for president. What you've got to keep in mind is politics was pretty normal, until relatively recently. Vampires and werewolves were considered mythical creatures, the stuff of fairy tales and ghost stories. But everything changed when Abraham Howler ran for Congress on an environmental protection platform. When he was re-elected several times before running for Senate, he came out of the lycanthropic closet, proudly declaring himself a vegetarian who was more concerned with preserving his habitat than making humans hors d'oeuvres. He quickly became the face of a new supernatural American movement which divided along party lines when the vampires made themselves known. For untold centuries, vampires wanted to remain legend, but they couldn't keep hiding when a viral video showed body camera footage of a police officer getting his head removed by a feral fiend who drank his blood from his neck. Soon, lobbying groups sprang up to promote vampires as stylish, cosmopolitan champions of human excellence. After all, they argued, the better life is for people, the better people taste. Somehow, the effort worked. Although I'll say again, their hypnotic powers make you act outside of your own best interests. When Amelia announced her candidacy, she did a prayer blitz with older, established media types who acted like they had known her for years, presumably because they did. She claimed she was over 600 years old, but she didn't look a day over 25. That was a bit of a detriment, as voters initially favored a more mature candidate. She won her party's nomination by holding a marathon series of midnight whistle-stop tours in which she glad-handed with the public and kissed babies without eating them. The gloves came off after the national conventions. With the candidates set, someone started photoshopping a collar and leash on pictures of Senator Howler, and people took turns showing which special interest groups were the master he was secretly serving. Other trolls would throw dog food at his campaign headquarters, while still bolder ones would dress up as a werewolf in a business suit and terrorize people at night in public parks and other open spaces. Many in the media speculated this was a guerrilla campaign by vampires and their supporters to make the case that only one supernatural being was the choice to be the commander-in-chief. Amelia's competition had some tricks up his sleeve. Senator Howler would invite Mrs. Leafadrain to debate him at town hall venues, but he would schedule them for daytime hours and act shocked when she didn't show up. Then he would spout out these little zingers to endear the public to him. Like when he asked the other candidate how she could stand to look at herself in the mirror. Then he'd wait a second before giving that deadpan look to the audience as they caught on. He argued that under a Leafadrain administration, the retirement age would be eliminated because vampires never age, and they never worry about retirement or medical bills. He also said she would look for ways to increase the supply of blood donors for her vampire friends, such as broadening use of the death penalty or mandating blood donations by every citizen. He was right, by the way. I look like a junkie from the track marks on my arm. Weekly donations are required by law, and missing them is punishable by, you guessed it, death by exsanguination. There were some live debates between the candidates in the evening hours. In one of them, some seemingly random guy in the audience ran over to the window and ripped down the curtain, letting the light of the full moon drape Sen and start his transformation on live television. I'm sure that guy was in the pocket of big blood. The pundit said he saved his candidacy by keeping his composure as he changed. He didn't attack anyone in the room. He smashed through the window and ran off into the night. I bet he was embarrassed in the morning when he turned back into a human. There were reports he walked into his campaign headquarters naked, with the newspaper covering his naughty bits. The headline over his privates reportedly read, "Senator runs after debate fireworks." The dirty tricks didn't stop there. Some anti-vamps tried to stake out Lifa Drain's crypt, so to speak, but her familiars kept them from getting to her coffin. Another protester put a giant crucifix in her front yard, but one of her acolytes set it on fire, and the discussion became racial rather than immortal. At a fundraiser on a yacht, a priest showed up to bless the lake and turn it into holy water. But when he tried to push Amelia into the water, she dodged his shove and sent him in the drink instead. The media was so slanted it was ridiculous. They loved how photogenic Lifa Drain was, how she radiated when she entered a room, how she made every reporter feel like she really savored every last drop of their interviews. By comparison, the newspapers were all trying to one-up each other on Howler headlines. Howler brought to heel, or students say Howler barking up wrong tree, and even roll up this paper to scold the senator. It was an absolute circus. Come Halloween, there were so many political costumes it was hard to count. Everyone was celebrating the holiday, their favorite spooky stories come to life, and the election of a lifetime. Even the kids who knocked on my door were mostly dressed in little business suits with political pins on their tiny lapels. Some made scary versions with vampire fangs and fake blood, or they would come running up to the door on all fours to beg for candy. The polls drew closer about a week before election night. A Twitter post showed a video claiming to be Lifa Drain feeding on a staffer backstage during a public appearance. The victim came forward and said he had volunteered to serve the campaign in any way he could, and that he was not attacked. After a few days of mixed coverage, Amelia Lifa Drain held a press conference and announced that she had never once taken blood without consent, and that this gotcha journalism was equivalent to secret recordings of women eating, which she argued was a form of body shaming. By election day, it was clear she had recovered from the incident and would go on to win. Senator Howler gave a concession speech in which he promised to continue his fight for the public and the environment through his senior position in the upper chamber. It was an emotional, difficult speech for him, but the media wouldn't let him have his dignity. The headline, Howler vows to lead Senate PAC. During the inauguration, President Lifa Drain refused to change tradition, aside from the ceremony being held at night. She was sworn in on a holy Bible, the skin of her hand boiling the entire time she touched it. During her inaugural address, President Lifa Drain said her first goal was to curtail the nation's homeless epidemic. It sounded great until we found out what her plan was to reduce their population. Soon it was trendy to become a vampire. Every power player in Washington became nocturnal to keep a close feel on the pulse of the White House, and some lobbyists even managed to get turned in order to better represent their demonic special interests. The taxation of churches was quickly approved by an appeasing legislature. The goal was obviously to close as many areas of holy ground as they could. Gone are the days of being annoyed at a Jehovah's Witness knocking on your door. Now we've got to worry it's a vampire trying to trick you into inviting them in. It's been declared a hate crime to fight back. Steaks have been outlawed, and garlic is banned from being imported or grown. Some underground dispensaries can be found if you have the right connections. The hydroponic industry doesn't just support marijuana anymore. There are population control bills being debated in committees. People are starting to realize we can't let our numbers grow out of control when so many Americans are now able to live forever. Naturally, the rich got in on the action as soon as it became profitable, and then they made it cool. Hollywood movies glamorize vampirism, and they mock all other supernatural identities. If you think werewolves have it bad, mummies have it even worse. They get no coverage at all. The media is mum. As for zombies, they are treated marginally better since the first gentleman is a zombie. But I think it's just a marriage of convenience to solidify the undead voting bloc. As for swamp creatures, they're being erased by climate change. Witches don't even get lip service since they openly claimed to be around before the Great Unveiling. The vampires said they already had their chance to be taken seriously. It's becoming a vampire-centric nation of selfish ghouls, chasing immortality and riches. I haven't slept much these past few weeks. Some of us who are still in favor of the living, not to be confused with pro-life, although we welcome anyone with a heartbeat, have banded together to form daytime vampire hunting groups. We've even got some werewolves helping us sniff out the bloodsuckers. The government calls it murder, but we call it self-preservation. I will not let my country be drained of its health, wealth, and actual blood. We have to take a stand. Steaks may be outlawed, but we are working on a plan. In a few weeks, there is a gala planned for a big art show. Many of the rich and powerful vampires will gather together to clink blood-filled glasses and toast some unholy abominations they call art. My friends and I are putting together a team that is going to take the fight to the fiends. This uprising may claim our lives, but we must put a stop to this madness. I've got a titanium neck guard, a squirt gun full of holy water, and I will be covered with garlic oil. I'll be going in as a distraction while the real operation unfolds. Keep an eye out for our Declaration of Independence, and don't buy into the hype. This won't be a tragedy for vampires. We'll just be sending them back to the hell in which they belong. Pray for our success. And for God's sake, please stop voting for politicians who are trying to kill you.